Welcome to another edition of River West Flowing. I'm Henry Nishimoto, and I'll be your host tonight. And I will be interviewing Jorianne, the coffee psychic. Welcome, Jorianne.
Thanks, Henry.
We were talking before, and one of the questions that first came up in my mind was, how did you become a psychic?
Okay. I became a psychic when I was very little. I was about 7 or 8 years old, and I had literally gotten hit in the head by a bat.
A flying one or a baseball bat?
There you go. Good question. I was probably about 7 or 8 years old, and there was a little boy in my neighborhood that I really had a crush on. His name was Eric. Hi, Eric. Thumbs up. Anyway, you know how kids will be kids, and you hear about all these kids, you know, these stories about when kids are kids and they do these really silly things. I don't know if it was because I had a crush on Eric or what it was, but he said to me one day, he goes, hey, Joe, he goes, I got something to show you. And I'm like, really, what? And I mean, you have to know that I was really excited about this kid, right? And he goes, well, it's in Roxanna's backyard, which was a neighbor girl. We lived 2 houses down from each other. So it was a girl that lived across the street from us. And you know, I not knowing any better, and what would I even think, I just trusted what he said, and I went in the backyard thinking there was going to be something really cool that he was going to show me. And the whole backyard was lined with school children.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm sitting here looking at all these school kids going like, uh-oh. You know, a little bit of fear and trepidation was, you know, kind of building up inside of me now. And I'm looking around, and I just look at Eric, and I'm going like, well, like, you know, what do you want to show me? And he picks up a bat, and he cracks me in the head with it.
Really?
Yeah.
And, I mean, was this a light hit or?
No, it was a real hard hit. It was such a hard hit that it knocked me out. And my sister, Sue, remembers you know, a little girl running past her saying, hey, Sue, you better get in Roxanna's backyard because, you know, Joe is on the ground knocked out.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what happened after that? I mean, when you said you became a psychic this way,
Yeah.
you didn't have any psychic experiences before that?
No, I didn't. And what happened after that was I had developed grand mal seizure disorder because I had a scar on the side of my brain. And it seemed like after that, the real story that occurred was one day, my mom and dad, my dad was a real estate broker, they were in the front room having a business transaction. And we, you know, there were 6 of us kids in the family. And we knew better not to interrupt my dad's business, you know, because that's just the way it was. So I was literally watching TV in the family room, and suddenly, as I'm watching this cartoon, a picture of a lady shows up on the screen, which wasn't there. And I somehow went into a trance, and I walked into my mom and dad's business meeting with these new clients, and went up to my mother, and I growled at her, and I said, I am the Catwoman, like that,
Really?
and then fell conscious on the floor. And that was truly my very first epileptic seizure. Yeah.
Now,
And that Catwoman seems to have followed me throughout life. And it's a really long story, very interesting, and maybe we'll get to it later.
okay, so when you were growling at her, were you as a spirit of some type, or were you physically in the room with her?
In my physical body as the child, I walked up to my mother as though you and I are standing here, and I was in a trance. I was totally unconscious. I had no idea what was going on. The only reason I knew that occurred was because my mother told me years and years and years later, before she died.
Okay.
So that story was, I didn't even know that happened.
It was almost like you were sleepwalking and didn't even realize what you were doing.
Exactly.
Very good. Well, what happened after that? What happened during the rest of grade school and high school? Because you were only in like 3rd grade when this happened.
Yeah, I think it was about 3rd grade.
So you had 5 years of grade school, 4 years of high school after that. What happened during the rest of those years? Um, were there more occurrences, or what was your experience like?
Well, some people have asked me in the past, did I know I was psychic? And I had no idea there was anything different from me than anyone else. One experience I had that showed me something was different was when my brother's Cub Scout leader, George, came to the house, and he had to go pick up a couple of other Cub Scouts. So I suddenly raised my hand and I says, George, can I go with you? And he goes, sure, come on in, get in the car. So I hopped in the car, and out of nowhere, I suddenly said, hey, George, I know where you're going. And he says, oh, really, Miss Smarty Pants? Where am I going? And I said, you're going 3 blocks down here, you're going to make a right-hand turn. You're going to go 2 more blocks down here, you're going to make a left-hand turn, you're going to go to the 3rd house on the right, and a little boy with brown hair and glasses is going to come to the front door, and this is what he's going to say. And down to the very last word, Henry, that kid said everything, made everything happen just as I described it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I bet that freaked poor old George out.
It really did. It really did. Because George then goes, he looks at me, his mouth drops, and he goes, how did you know that? And I was like, I don't know. I didn't know.
Right.
Yeah. And
Very
it really didn't
interesting.
mean anything to me either.
Well, so one of the things that you had mentioned was that you grew up in a haunted house.
I did.
How, I mean, there were ghosts floating through the room, or
Thank you for asking.
what actually happened?
You know, you don't always stop and think about your childhood and these experiences, right?
Mm-hmm.
We had so many experiences, two that I can really remember vividly. As far as seeing spirits floating through the house, we did have an experience with that, but it was outside the house, and it was very cool. My sister and I were upstairs. We had more of a dorm-like bedroom upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
And my sister and I were cleaning up our bedroom because we had a mutual bedroom. Her bedroom was here underneath the window, and then mine was just adjacent to it underneath a different window. And suddenly, I'm standing there, and I'm suddenly looking out her window, and I'm going like, oh my God, Susan, Susan, come here, hurry up, look, what's outside the window? And she's like, oh my God. And we both like grabbed onto each other, and we flew down the stairs because we were in the upstairs, right?
Right.
And we were running into my mom and dad's bedroom. We were going like, Mom and Dad, there's something outside the bedroom window. And they're like, oh, come on, you guys, it's your imagination. Not when 2 people are seeing the exact same thing, Henry. And I'm telling you, it could have been as though somebody had taken like, if somebody had taken a white sheet
Mm-hmm.
and put it on a pole that was like 20 feet high and started waving it outside of a bedroom window. Well, first off, who would have had a pole that high, number one? Although my brother Michael, who just passed away, would have had that kind of sense of humor to do that to us, okay?
Right.
But the sheet was transparent, literally. Oh, one more thing I forgot. The window was actually breathing in and out. You know how you have those movies when they'll show a piece of glass or a wall having a face impressed on it? The glass window at this bedroom window was breathing in and out. I'm telling you, it freaked us out. That was amazing.
That would kind of freak me out too, I would imagine too.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned your sister. How many, let's see, there were 6 children in the family? So,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
How many boys, how many girls?
3 boys and 3 girls.
Now, were they all experiencing these psychic phenomena at some point, while you were still living in your parents' house, or what was happening then?
Well, now that's an interesting question because my sister, first off, my uncle was an exorcist. And when we were growing up, our parents taught us that the body is only a carrying case for the soul. Taught us about God and that this is only a temporary experience down here on earth. Okay, so we had a really good basic, training about God and spirituality and life, okay?
Okay.
So my uncle, being an exorcist, started working with my sister Sue. And I remember a story that she told me that she was doing some sort of, I don't know if it was a channeling or something like that, but my uncle was communicating with a little dead girl through my sister's body. And my sister was sitting as though she was on a swing, and the little girl was swinging back and forth, okay?
Okay.
But the little girl liked my sister's body so much that she did not want to get out.
Wow.
Yeah. And I remember my sister telling me about this, and I was going like, oh man, that must have been really scary. But my uncle knew what to do. And he talked to this little girl, and he literally got her out of my sister's body. Well, what was really fascinating was that she did not end up going into the psychic business. But just by that story alone, I thought, gee whiz, if my sister could do it, I could do it too.
Okay. So you started helping your uncle, or what other exposures did you have in the psychic realm before you really started to develop and use your psychic abilities?
Well, I remember as a little girl hearing a voice repeating to me all the time, "You're special, you're special." And that's when I was little.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was about 28 years old, and I mean, I would have these different experiences that were very sporadic about knowing what was going to happen, hearing things from the spirit world or whoever was speaking to me, okay? But believe me, they weren't present in the room. I ended up, when I was about 28 years old, hearing a voice saying, and I was married at this time now, okay?
Okay.
I'd had one unsuccessful marriage. It was a brief one when I was younger, so I got the gift of my 2 beautiful older daughters from this marriage. And my second marriage, really great guy, but for whatever reason, we weren't mature enough to keep that marriage together. And we had both said so, later on. We had stayed friends and stuff. But I had heard at around 28 years old, now is the time. Now is the time. And I'm going like, what's the time? What is the time? And I kept hearing it, now is the time. And I'm going like, what is the time? Would you guys please tell me what's going on here?
Quick, buy a lottery ticket.
Come on. Totally, right? So it was sometime after that my second marriage did not continue. We got divorced. And at that point, I just wanted to find out why I could hear and see things differently than other people could. I mean, I really wanted to know. And I think the hardest part about that was I really was born and raised a Catholic, and I love God. I love God, I love Jesus, all of that. I didn't even know that there was a difference between being a Catholic and Christian, and being a Christian. I was so Catholic, and you hear those jokes about when you go up to heaven, right? And shh, be quiet when you pass the 7th door because that's where all the Catholics are and they think they're the only ones up here. I don't know if you heard that joke or not, but it's a funny joke. Anyway, but very much being into God and very much knowing that there was a very clear definition between the interpretation in the Bible about, psychics, not being well received or being evil or all that stuff that I was taught as a child, along with the other teachings of the church. Mm-hmm. And so it was quite a struggle for me to go ahead and learn how to balance the difference between what I was taught, the rules of the church, versus real spiritual teachings of the Bible.
Okay.
So at that point then I went and I started, it was almost like a week after my husband had left the house that suddenly, lo and behold, my sister's friend, Bill, said, "Hey, Joe, I know you're having some psychic experiences. I'm going to a class. Would you like to go with me?" And I'm like, oh my God, I would love that. That was kind of weird. Because up to that point, I always said, you know what, I'll never go to a psychic. And man, I was unbelievably adamant about that. I says, I will never go to a psychic. If God wants me to know something, he will tell me himself. And I also forgot to tell you that I wanted to be a nun. That's good for the black and white outfit for today. I really wanted to be a nun. Yep.
Did you actually go into the convent, or you just got up to a certain point and then decided, no, I'm not going to?
That's I really wanted to be a nun very badly, and I think at a certain point I was hoping that my parents were going to check into it for me, and they didn't. And I had gotten into through high school, and it was really in my senior year. I guess that would have been the next step after getting out of high school. Mm-hmm. But that's when I met my first husband, and And the rest is history.
Okay, and life just kind of got in the way of that happening.
Yep, life took its course, and that was it. Yep.
Very good. So, when you said you were in your 20s when you just decided, okay, I'm really going to go after this and develop this ability. Were you in the Chicago area? Were you living in a different state? Were you
I was born and raised
working?
in Chicago,
Okay.
and I was around, you know, the 55th and Trumbull area, 55th and Kedzie area,
Okay.
right on there. When I left, I was raised in Chicago, moved into Burbank, went to Revis High School, graduated Revis, and because I met my husband, we started our family. We pretty much stayed for the next 25 years around 55th and Kedzie and Trumbull and that area.
Okay, so you're a Southwest Sider.
Southsider. That's right.
And obviously a Sox fan.
Yeah. Go Sox.
So now you've decided that this is the career that you want to do and have to make a living at. What did you do after that? What were your next steps? How did you decide, or how does one decide, okay, I have this ability, I don't even understand it, it seems sporadic, but it seems very accurate, and what do I do to develop it, or what made you decide that now you want to become a psychic as a profession and to make a living at it?
At first, I didn't know that I wanted to be a professional psychic, Henry, not in any way, shape, or form. I just wanted to find out why I was different. I actually went to college to become a psychologist.
Okay.
So I had gone to Daly College, and then I had gone to Governor State University studying psychology.
Right.
And one day, my spirit guides, now, I developed somewhere a form of communication with these dead people that are helping me.
Okay.
And suddenly I'm hearing in the background, they're saying, Jorianne, your friend Lorraine is going to go ahead and continue on to become a professional social worker. And this was a girl that I hooked up with. We were great friends. We'd go to school all the time. We'd hang out together. It was really a great relationship. And they said, and then you were going to drop out and become a professional psychic. And my first response was, yeah, right, you guys are nuts, man. I want my degree. I want to become a therapist because I want to help people. So, and as it was, when you study psychology, you really need to go in, and they say one of the most important things that you have to do first is to clean up your own backyard.
Right.
So I had to go ahead and get a therapist for myself because you want to see what it's going to be like for your clients. Well, lo and behold, I didn't know that I had a ton of stuff from my past that needed to be resolved. And when I was dealing with all of that, it was really a little bit too much for me to handle. And because of that, at that point, man, those dead people were so right. I had to take more time off to get a grasp on that. And then because of that, now things are kicking in with my psychic work. People are asking me. So I'm going to go back a little bit, okay? So one day when I'm dealing with all my own business, and again, I love therapy, Henry. I think it's one of the greatest things for any and all of us, whether you've had any upsetting things from the past or whether you haven't. It's really important to go ahead and check your own stuff out so we need to be all self-cleaning ovens.
Right.
Okay? I mean, it's real easy for us to go ahead and take a bath every day. But if you're upset, or is there something coming up that you're not relating to or something from left field, are you going inside and going like, well, let me see, I'm upset about this, or where did it come from? So really, therapy, life coaching, any of that stuff is just very important for us to go ahead and handle that stuff, okay? So that's what I did. So anyway, I then went and would be giving out my readings. And I started out just I was giving readings from the vantage point of, now I'm called the coffee psychic, right?
Right.
Okay. Well, one day, before I became the coffee psychic, my sister-in-law's cousin, Rosa, she ended up, she's Hispanic, And she ended up getting together with me so we could discuss different forms of divining information, like what did she know, what did I know. And she said, Jorianne, look, she says, if we take, it's a Hispanic thing, we take a black cup of coffee, pour cream into it, and we're able to see letters, numbers, body parts, faces, everything in the coffee. And I'm like, oh my God. And because I used to drink 30 to 40 cups of coffee a day, which you know I was awake all the time, right? Right?
Obviously.
I started playing with it. And so I would go out to restaurants, I would go to my friends' homes, I would, with my family, you know, I used to drink at Boston, so I was pouring cream into my coffee and I was staring into the coffee, looking for pictures. I mean, it became so much fun that people in the restaurants, I was doing it all the time, and people in the restaurants would literally walk up to me and they'd go like, we know what you're doing. Will you come over to our table and read us? And I'm going like, sure, I'd love to. I even had waiters and waitresses coming up and going like, ma'am, is your coffee okay? Excuse me, like is there something in the coffee, right?
Right.
So that's how I get started. And I was still going to college, still going back to college and stuff then at this point. And I was, you know, at this point I had gotten my divorce. So I was, you know, struggling, you know, single mom, raising my children, raising my family. And the spirits, after many years, had said, now you have to charge. I'm going like, you know, okay. Because there are so many people out there, Henry, that feel like if it's a spiritual gift, then
Right.
you're just supposed to keep giving it. Just keep giving and giving and giving it. But it had been becoming so much of my time, like reading people and counseling people and stuff like this through with the psychic abilities and stuff, that it was actually, all I can say is it was like a gift from God, and that they were leading me down the path that this was going to be my form of making money.
Well, you have to make money somewhere along the way, you know, whether it's at a regular job, and you can't, you know, it becomes a little difficult sitting there for hours,
Yeah,
you know, staring at a coffee cup
yeah.
and not getting paid for it.
You know, that also triggered something else. You know, because this was, you know, being a nun and really following, you know, God's rules and stuff like that was like so essentially important to me that I started praying for a sign. I said, God, you know, I know what the church is teaching. Do you want me to be in this field or don't you? Please give me a sign. Everything that was happening, I love God so much. How can this be a bad thing? How can I possibly know all these things that I'm being told in order to help people with their lives? How can this be a bad thing? So I prayed and prayed and prayed, and you know that's what I tell people to do when they're going into anything. Ask for a sign. And one morning I've been woken up at 4:58 in the morning, and I never for years I kept thinking, because they kept waking me up at 4:58 in the morning.
Right.
And I was going like, why 4:58? It was only like 3 years ago that I came to realize that it's my birth time. Isn't that hysterical?
Okay.
So the spirits woke me up at 4:58 in the morning, and they said, write this down. And I'm like, okay. And I wrote down everything I heard in my head.
Okay.
And it was very beautiful. You know, we are a whole body, and if one part of the body isn't working with the other, then la 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 la. And I was like, wow, this is very strange. So I wrote it out exactly as the spirits had given it to me. And I put it down, and I reread it, and I was going like, wow, that's really beautiful. So another half hour passes, and they said, now write this down. And I started writing again. And, excuse me, and I ended up this time trying to add information to the next one, because I thought, wow, this is really, you know, very poetic. I started writing information, adding stuff to what they were telling me, and they were very clear. No, take that out of there. That does not belong there. And I'm like, okay. So I knew for sure I was listening to a much higher power, okay? So another half hour passes, and as I'm sitting here, I hear very clearly, now go to the Bible. And I was like, okay. I went to the Bible, and they told me where to open up. Corinthians, I think it was Corinthians 12:13 in my Bible, which happens to be spiritual gifts. And every single thing that I wrote in the first writing that they gave me was almost identical, almost word for what I had read in the Bible about spiritual gifts, how we're all part of the body, stuff like that, the whole
Right.
body. And so to me, that was my sign. That was my sign, and that's how I said, okay, God, this is where you want me. This is where I will be.
Well, it's interesting because when I mentioned the coffee psychic to people, they say, "Oh, does she read the grounds?" And I think traditionally that's where a lot of people, the first thing that a lot of people envision is you're reading the grounds or you're reading tea leaves, and you know that there's something else physical there, rather than just the actual coffee and the cream.
Well, there's different types of coffee reading. You know, so you know about the grounds, and you know about the Turkish coffee reading where they take the sediments, right?
Right.
And they boil the coffee and then they put it in the cup, and some people have to sip it. And then they either read what's left in the bottom of the coffee, and sometimes they turn it over and they read it from a saucer. So yeah, so there's a lot of different types. I didn't even know about the Hispanics having a form of reading the cream on the top of the coffee. But I've developed mine over the years to a much finer, higher level. Because not only do I watch the symbols, I watch the direction the coffee goes in. I watch, if anything, I interpret the bubbles that fall in the coffee. Anything falls on the side of the cup, I interpret that. If I'm using, and I normally don't use a clear cup, but many times when I do my house parties, people will bring their own coffee mugs. And if somebody brings a clear coffee mug, I'm able to literally look at the coffee and see the images inside the bottom of the cup too.
Wow.
Yeah, so I really raised it to a much higher art.
Terrific. And what are some of the other things that you've developed along with the psychic ability in reading the coffee? I know that one of my friends is a healer. She reads tarot cards, but she's more limited. She's only getting what the cards are showing, where it seems that you're actually getting an image or a vision or a communication. Are there other things that you're molding into your business that go hand in hand with just the coffee reading?
When I started doing the coffee reading, that's pretty much all I had outside of when the spirits would talk to me or I'd come to know things sporadically. So as I started doing it day by day by day, my clairvoyance, which of course is to be able to see clearly, started opening up more. And clairvoyance really means, Henry, when you're looking behind people, you can see things either in their auric field, or you can see things around the room that just aren't there.
Okay.
Okay. Also, you start getting images on what you call your mind screen inside your third eye. Like you could either see things internally, basically, that's what you're saying.
Okay.
Then my clairaudience started kicking up more. So the things that I would hear from my spirit world, whether it's really somebody talking to me clearly, or impressions on my mind for me to interpret it, I'd get that sort of stuff coming to me, and that started getting bigger and bigger. Even with the clairvoyance, I'd start seeing dead people, right?
Okay.
Then I could smell things. Then I could feel them in the room, or I could feel them touching me. And I actually came to also taste things. Like say if I tasted spaghetti and I was reading somebody, and I'd say, wow, either you love spaghetti, right? Or why am I getting spaghetti? And they're like, Joanne, I just had it last night for dinner. Or that's my favorite dish.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
And smelling, if I'm doing a reading for somebody, Henry, if I'm smelling the ocean, you're going on a cruise. And it's almost valid almost every time.
Wow. Now you do this just for people, or I heard a story about something about I think it was a dog or an animal recently that somebody read something about in a, like, almost like it had a prior life, and they were able to actually see this animal psychically being something else or doing something else in a past life. I mean, is that true? Can animals also be read, or you know, you can see things around an animal, and you know, you're not limited to just human beings?
Yes. You can also, not only can you read human beings, whether it's their, and again, good question, whether it's the past life of the human being, or, you know, just a ton of different things around them. But with animals, positively too. I had done an event for a doggy shop, probably about 2 years ago. And all of these people were bringing in their pets.
Right.
And one woman literally came in and she was like, she was extremely upset. And she came to the table, she goes, I don't mean to interrupt you, but my dog's missing. And I said, okay, wait a minute. And I was able to tap in to see where the dog was, when he was coming home, and literally that he sat at that window as soon as she left. He sat at the window staring out at her. He was so upset that he ended up jumping out the window after her, and her car was already down the street. And she said that's exactly, because she called me up probably like 2 days later and told me that's exactly what happened.
Wow.
Yeah. And then you were talking about the past life. This one dog, it was really hysterical. I think he was like a little bulldog. Do you remember in the military when they used to have these dogs that had the actual army hats on?
Yeah.
And they had the little flasks right underneath on their collars and stuff? I saw a dog doing exactly that. He was on his little paws and he was going underneath like the wire and stuff, the barbed wire.
Uh-huh.
And so I think it looked like the dog was in World War II.
Wow. So he's like a messenger dog
Exactly.
type of thing.
Exactly.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Isn't that cool? I thought it was kind of fun.
Well, what about people who sit there and say, I know there's something else, like I've been someplace else before and I can't remember, and I can just sense it, and you're not sensing it either. Well, you sense that there's something, but you don't have the vision. But they want to know, where was I? Where did I come from? Are there other methods of helping those people out to find out, you know, what happened in their past, or where were they in a past life? I've heard of hypnosis and taking people back, but that it can be dangerous, I guess, in some ways, but that there's a way of actually enabling them to find out where they had been in the past, and then even with your abilities to see possibly even where they're going in the future. Do you incorporate that into your work, or?
Yes, I do.
You do.
Yeah. Again, you had asked me what else do I do with my psychic abilities and stuff, and
Right.
how I've come forward into the future with what I do. I am also a hypnotherapist, but even doing readings, during a reading, I can see what somebody has been in the past, okay? Now, it could be that they come to me saying, Jorianne, I've had dream after dream after dream of me being this or me doing that. I'd like to explore it more. What should we do? Well, I'm also a trained hypnotherapist. So then we can set up another session and go ahead and really explore those past lives that they're having and find out what is that all about. You know, what's going on. Many times we literally know some of the people in this lifetime that we were traveling with in past lives.
Really?
Yeah. So it's very fun. Your husband could have been your father in a past life. Your husband could have been your brother or your son in a past life, or your daughter, because we change sexes, we change races. It is said that we're supposed to have every experience that it is to have. Male, female, tall, short, fat, skinny, different races, everything.
Mhm.
So, and interacting with each other in different masks, so to speak, to help teach each other our lessons so we can excel and get to our higher level, you know, our nirvana.
Okay.
Totally reconnect with God.
Wow.
Yeah. But there's also something else that I do, Henry, that I'd love to tell you about because I'm so in love with it. I just love it. I never thought I would ever do it either. And that's exorcisms.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, your uncle was doing that.
He was, that's right. And that, you know, with him doing that, again, if it wasn't for, would you believe that I'm shy? Or that I was?
Yeah. Well, no, not really.
I know, right? I tell people, no, I was shy too before. I used to be really shy. And they're like, come on, Jorianne. And I'm like, no, really. Good thing I love to talk, though. But I was very shy. And the things, if it wasn't for my sister really going up there and having that experience with my uncle, I don't know how I would have perceived everything. I probably would have still would have moved forward. But with her doing it, you know, she was somebody that I looked up to. And I thought, wow, if Sue could do it, I could do it too. And then my uncle doing the exorcism work, I think that really took the sting off of all of the Hollywood stories, the scary stories that you get that say, ooh, you know, that's evil or that could be dangerous or whatever. And I'm not saying that it couldn't be dangerous. I'm just saying that as, you know, TV and movies have Hollywoodized everything, they really make it very frightening. You've got all these horror stories that are out there and all these scary movies, and you know, it's just not the same way.
Yeah, people's heads going round and round.
Yeah, no, mine, I do seances too, by the way.
You do?
Yeah, I do seances all the time. In my head, I promise people no split pea soup coming from me, and my head does not spin on my shoulders or anything like that, you know. But the exorcism work, I liken it to dogs having fleas. And you know how sometimes a dog can have a flea and they start scratching, and then sometimes the skin can get infected and they start really going crazy and they really can't be their normal relaxed self?
Right.
One of my goals has really been to go ahead and really try to find a priest that I could talk to about the Catholic exorcist process, their normal way of doing the exorcisms. Because I know the way that I was taught, and it's not the Catholic means. It's more of a spiritualist way of training.
Right.
And what you do is you sit with somebody else for me, I sit with somebody else, and I go into a trance-like state. And what I do is I start scanning the person's aura, their energy field. And I look for any break in the auric field, and I look to see if there's any spots or blobs or tears or anything, because you can have emotional upsets that, you know, thought forms that
Right.
are interfering with this person. But you can also have what's called a discarnate entity or an attachment. And you normally have more attachments rather than, you know, like full possessions. Okay, that's where a spirit comes in and really tries to take over this person's entire everything. But an attachment would be somebody that, say if somebody had an accident, or say if somebody was having a slight drinking problem or a drug problem, well, this person who may have been a druggie or an alcoholic in the past sees an opening in this person's auric field, whether there was depression, car accident, whatever made a tear in the auric field, and then they attach onto this person. Well, now this person is going like, now I really want to have a drink, because this dead guy is trying to get, you know, he didn't ascend into the light, and he's trying to get his needs satiated off of this person that he already knows is a drinker. And he's like, well, take another one, man. Oh, go ahead, take another drink. And this guy's going like, why am I drinking so much? And then it becomes a habit, and he doesn't even realize that he's got an attachment. He's thinking that he's just developing a worse, you know, drinking problem. And that happens with drugs, and, you know, there's so much to it. But anyway, when you work with this type of process, you're literally talking to each discarnate entity, each dead guy, and asking him, what happened? How'd you get here? Do you know where you're at? You counsel that dead guy, you take him off, you get him into the heavenly realms, and then he's free. He's not caught. They're normally confused. They're not even sure where they're at all the time. And then the person, once you got the whole energy field cleared off, that enables them to heal. So it's really a wonderful process, and I'm really jazzed up about that. So I also, Henry, I don't even know how everything rolled into one, but over the years, I would learn more, I would do more, I would learn more, I would do more, and it's what I do. I just love it.
Well, it's terrific. And obviously your reputation is well founded with your accuracy. You're known for your accuracy.
Thank you.
And it's interesting because sometimes it takes a little while for your predictions to come true. But I understand that people will call you up 2, 3, 5 years later and say, remember when you said, and you probably don't even remember, but obviously they do, and they're just giving you the feedback that whatever you said actually did come true, and maybe in a way that they didn't even expect it.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I let people know right away when I do a reading that I get information on them that's past, present, and future. And I can't always tell. I'll ask you, did this happen already? And they'll go, well, no, that didn't happen. I'll just say, well, I'm tape recording it for you. Keep the tape, review it later, and let me know what happens. And I get feedback anywhere from 1 hour up to 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So people will call me up, as you said, because I invite them to. You know, I love following my accuracy level because, Henry, there are times that I say things that I don't know where it comes from. You know, I mean, I know where it comes from, but I'm pretty amazed at it myself. And they tell me, do you remember when you said, you know, that this was going to happen? And I'm going like, yeah. And there was one woman, this was last year. And I looked at her and I saw her glowing. I mean, I see people's auras in the first place. And I'm seeing her glowing with this gold and green. And I'm going like, holy mackerel, is she beautiful? And I knew what it meant. And I said to her, I said, you will never want a day again in your life for a penny, ever. And I told her she was going to go to Las Vegas. And this was last year, and she won $12 million out in Las Vegas.
Wow.
Isn't that wonderful?
Fantastic.
Very exciting. Yeah.
I'm going to have to go play that machine.
Yeah, really, right?
Well, I guess for most people, they don't understand what really is happening out there in this spirit world. And I guess that's why there's so many stories, and why things like The Exorcist can exist. And you know, people, when they think of exorcisms, they think, oh, you know, the room's going to shake, the bed's going to float, the kid's going to go up in the air, you know, all of the Hollywood stuff. But I think from what I've learned and seen, that spiritual world does exist. I'm really convinced of that, although I'm not psychic myself. At least I don't think I am.
Yeah.
You know, there may have been, ooh, there's a hunch I'll play this number or something that worked.
Sure.
But obviously not at anywhere near your level.
We're all psychic,
or even,
by the way.
Or even a lot of people's levels. But I really do, I really am convinced that this psychic world does exist. And I just find it interesting to continue to learn more about it, and to witness part of it, and to hear stories like yours, and especially seeing the successes that you've had. I took a little bit of reading on your website. So I had a little bit of background there. We've talked before, so I have that background. But there's a lot more that I've learned today that I didn't know about you.
Oh, thank you.
And I just really appreciate it. I'm not sure, was there anything else that you wanted to add that we haven't touched on as far as your abilities and the work that you do today?
I would love to share something very special. I've got 8 grandchildren. And a lot of people have asked me about my family. Like, do my kids have this ability? Do my grandchildren have this ability? And I've got 3 daughters, and they've all worked with me. My one daughter, Terry, has done exorcisms with me,
Uh-huh.
and we're also doing Reiki work together, so that's another thing that I do, Reiki healing.
Okay.
I'm a Reiki master teacher. And my other daughter, Christina's done some stuff with me, and then my daughter, Melanie, my youngest daughter, when she had her astrology chart done, they told her that she had Nostradamus-type abilities.
Really?
And you know Nostradamus, right?
I've heard some of the stories about him, yes.
The really famous, very famous prophet, right? Where he had to bring his information out in rhymes and stuff like that. So I learned, and as she was frightened out of this business, so to speak. And you know, I'll even share this with you. I had an experience where, because I also do the paranormal investigations, one lady had seen me on TV, another TV show, years and years and years ago. And she told me that she had a haunted house and would I please come and investigate it for her. And I was like, sure, not a problem. She showed me that she literally had pictures of ectoplasm hanging from her closet. And I was going like, oh my God, and it was beautiful. I still have these pictures. So she also told me that she communicated with these spirits. And this is called automatic handwriting. So my daughter Chrissy was very interested in this automatic handwriting because her girlfriend Carrie passed. And she had come to my house one day. But I couldn't join in the festivities because I had to get ready for work. I had a house party to do.
Right.
So I was in the bathroom. And suddenly, as I'm hearing Pam writing at the table, this automatic handwriting, they're trying to make contact with Carrie, right?
Okay.
And in automatic handwriting, you're going to pick up a pen, you're going to write, and sometimes the spirits will actually write through you, either big handwriting, small handwriting. They'll be telling you things, and just like remember I told you I wrote down the stuff from the Bible, the spirits that were telling me, right?
Right.
You listen to what they say, you write it out, and sometimes the spirits actually take over. Anyway, Pam is suddenly going, Melanie, wrong time, pregnant, my pregnant daughter Melanie. Melanie, wrong time, wrong place, leave now, Melanie. And I'm in the bathroom going like, what am I hearing? So I'm sitting here very concerned, and I come out to the kitchen, and Pam's in this automatic kind of this little daze going like, Melanie, wrong time, wrong place, leave now. And I'm going like, okay, what's going on? And as I'm watching my daughter Melanie, who's sitting right by the door, I suddenly see and hear, I see this big V-shaped light coming down, almost like coming down from heaven or somewhere, down to the top of her head, down into her belly. And I saw these balls of energy, these balls of light, and I heard like that. Mm-hmm. And I saw 9 balls of light with the sounds just going boom, 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 right into her tummy. And I was going like, oh, no, you don't. I knew better at this time. I'm going like, I do not want a multiple personality disorder grandbaby here. So I'm doing this exorcism, and I'm commanding that these spirits leave my daughter, la, 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 la. I'm just commanding them out of her. I'm casting them out of her. Suddenly, my friend Pam is starting to go like, and Melanie was doing this too, and she's starting to fall off the chair. I'm going like, oh no, what's happening here? So now I'm casting these spirits out of her. Oh my goodness. I had to take a breath. And I was going like, what just happened here? Well, I have my own radio show now. It's on the internet, contacttalkradio.com. I'll just share that. And we talk about this all the time, how people have to protect themselves. Please. There's nothing wrong with doing any spiritual work, but please protect yourself. Whether people, we always say stay away from the Ouija boards. But if people are going to use the Ouija boards, please put a bubble of white light around you. Ask for the protection of Jesus Christ, all the saints and angels to be with you doing this work. Because my friend Pam did not know how to protect herself, and she didn't do it. And when I confronted my daughter Melanie, I said, honey, you weren't even supposed to be in on this. What happened? And she said to me, she goes, Mom, I just thought I could help make contact with Carrie a lot easier because I knew Carrie. But she did not know how to protect herself either, because I didn't know that she was going to do this, so I never thought to teach her that,
Right.
right? So now the very interesting part was, sometime before Melanie being pregnant, I was doing some channeling work, and I also am a channeler, right? I'm an exorcist, a channeler, a psychic, a medium. I pretty much cover the whole board. And one day in trance, this was before Melanie was pregnant, I kept saying in this session, Joanna's coming, Joanna's coming. Now that's one of my granddaughters.
Okay.
I've got 4. And when my daughter, Melanie, after she had this really weird experience, everything was great. And I don't know if that was one thing that kind of threw her off doing her psychic work. Again, Melanie having the Nostradamus type abilities. But when she says something, I listen, right?
Right.
But anyway, so when she gets fully pregnant, she's ready to give birth, she suddenly says, Mom, I'm going to name the baby after you, but change my name a little bit. She calls her Joanna. And my girlfriend said, do you remember in that channeling that they said, the spirit said Joanna was coming? I was going like, wow, I never thought about that. That was kind of cool. So I knew about her birth at least 2 years before she came. But I often wonder, Henry, if it wasn't that something special was happening. When those spirits came into my daughter's body, she was pregnant with Joanna. And lo and behold, Joanna happens to be the most psychic of my 8 grandchildren.
Wow.
Even to the point to where last week, one of my clients came in, and Joanna and Trinity were at my house, and I asked my client, because she knows my grandchildren, and I said, do you mind if Joanna and Trinity kind of sit in and listen? Because I'd like them to learn more about how I do my process and my psychic work. And she goes, oh, not a problem. And I said, is it okay if they say something, if they pick something up? And she goes, sure, not a problem. So Joanna ended up saying, she said, so sweet, Henry. She goes, can I tell you something? And she goes, sure, go ahead. She goes, do you own a red car? And she goes, no, honey, I don't. And she goes, she thinks for a minute. She goes, well, I'm sorry to tell you that I see somebody in a red car having a car accident tonight. She goes, so I want you to be very careful, she says. And she goes, okay, I'll be careful driving. And this woman was so sweet too. My other little granddaughter, who happens to be very sweet, very loving. My one friend had been having a little trouble with her relationship, and she was totally telling her how wonderful it was going to turn out. Everything was going to turn out great. It was beautiful. I mean, outside of the information I was getting. Well, anyway, my friend calls back. This was just earlier this week, and says, you are never going to believe it. And I said, what? She goes, my cousin has a red car and had a car accident that night.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh my God, you're kidding me. She goes, no. And I didn't even pick that up on the reading, but Joanna did. And then also my little granddaughter Trinity, everything that she said also when she was telling the lady about how great things were going to turn out, totally turned out really wonderful.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing she wasn't driving, that her cousin didn't drive her there that night.
That's right. Good point, good point. Yep.
Wow. So the kids are picking up or developing the abilities also.
Yes.
I would say that if I was a child developing those abilities, I would think that I just would be very fortunate and blessed that I would have somebody who's experienced as you are to be there to teach and to protect me.
Oh, thank you.
Even though the oldest granddaughter, or the I guess Joanna, she may understand about the protection. The youngest one might not yet, but they're just very fortunate
Thank
that
you.
they have the overseer, the person that can help them mature and guide them along, so that they can just really develop themselves too. And who knows, maybe you can have your own little psychic family traveling group.
There you go.
However, you know.
Whatever it looks like. Well, I got to tell you, my other granddaughter, Samantha, too, I think this was last year sometime. I have no idea what we were saying. We were going in some direction of name your favorite Christmas song or something like that. And I said, on the count of 3, and we both said Frosty the Snowman. At the same time, we were going like, oh, crap. So really, all of my granddaughters, mostly the granddaughters, as a matter of fact, have gone into the psychic field and pick up things, hear things, and even funny. One more thing, my oldest grandson, Robbie, when Melanie was pregnant, it was very funny because Robbie said to Aunt Melanie, he goes, "Hey, Aunt Melanie, when is the baby supposed to be due?" He goes, "March 8th?" And she says, he goes, "I mean the 19th?" That's exactly how he said it. He says, "March 8th?" He goes, "I mean the 19th?" And she goes, "No, honey, the 20th, but you never know." And it was March 7th that she had high blood pressure. March 6th that she had high blood pressure. We put her in the hospital March 7th, and Joanna was born March 8th.
Wow.
How do you like that? Yep. So pretty much all the kids, and I think it's probably because I do have more of an open attitude about it, that this is a very natural way to be. You know, we're physical, mental, you know, and spiritual beings, but most of all, we're spiritual beings having a physical experience, not physical beings having a, you know, spiritual experience.
Well, I would guess that also that being the primary psychic in the family, that you're also drawing the experiences and the abilities and the opportunities for your grandchildren and your children.
Yeah.
You know, to have those experiences and you know, if they choose to do so at some point, maybe develop them also.
Thank you.
The same way you have. So.
Thank you.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add? We're getting pretty close to the end of our time. Is there anything else that you'd like to add to, so that the people would have more of a flavor of why it's important to have a trained person involved with any type of psychic work that they want to do? I mean, because anybody can pick up a book and learn how to read tarot cards.
No, you know what? I wouldn't. I think the last thing I'll say is that you don't have to have a trained person. Trust in God. That's the most important thing to say, because we're all connected to God. We all have our 6 sensibilities, and really, if you trust in God, then you can't go wrong.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Henry.
Thank you for being our guest tonight.
Thank you so much.